I'll be with you in a second. I'll just when this gets working. Here we go. Is that okay? So, Deputy Lieutenant, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Welcome you to the 2021 Annual General Meeting of Oxfordshire Association for the Blind. Glad that everybody could make it today. There's a lot more than I was expecting, I must admit. And this will be my first time chairing the event in person. Last year we had a virtual event, which I'm not sure how many people we had attending. Mark, was that about 10? Yeah, we've got a chance to have more people here this year than we have previously. And we are actually live streaming this year as well. So there may well be people watching from home. I'm not going to read out the apologies. We've had a few in, but if anybody wants to see a list of those, they will make those available to you if you want to see them. The agenda for today and the annual accounts are available. We have copies if you just want to ask a member of OAB staff if you need a copy of those. A few things of housekeeping generally. If we could ask you when you're moving around the hall, if you could wear your masks, please. That's for protection of yourselves and everybody else. Feel free to remove them when you're sat down if you think that you're far enough away from other people. We are unfortunately not able to offer refreshments this year. I know some people only come for the tea and cake, but unfortunately we're not able to offer those this year. But there are jugs of water around, so again, if you need a refill or need a drink, then just let a member of OAB staff know. We're trying to keep the place as well ventilated as possible with the windows and the doors open. But if you do need anything at any point, again, contact a member of OAB staff. We will have a Q&A at the end, so if there's anything that you hear that you want to ask a question about during any of the talks and presentations we give today, then if you keep those to the end, and we'll do our best to answer them then. Okay, so before we start with the main business of the meeting, I'd like to pass over to our President, Adrian Hill, as he wants to deliver a message to everybody.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to be here. It's a long time since I was last in Oxford, too long. So it's lovely to see such a large audience and members of OAB. Of course, what has been particularly good as well in the past couple of years is that I have at least been able to keep in contact with the other trustees via modern technology, via Zoom and what have you. So I've participated with some of the meetings, even though I've not been able to come across. I wanted to take this opportunity of thanking all the dedicated staff of OAB who've been working from home, particularly during the last 12 to 18 months. I also want to thank all the volunteers, of whom we have many, and without whom the charity would not be able to progress and have the impact that it does have in the community. And of course, I want to thank the trustees, my colleagues amongst the trustees, under the chairmanship of Guy Lawful, on my right here, for maintaining most of the services that we provide without any significant disruptions during the pandemic. Everyone has worked very hard to meet the increasing needs of visually impaired people in the county, which is estimated to be about 12,000, if I've got that correct. Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that about right?
Roughly, yeah, a few more, but yeah.
Yes, given my plus or minus, there's always room for error in any statement of figures. And a special thanks to Helen Old, who, as director, successfully guided our service delivery in the early part of the pandemic and introduced a new Befriending telephone service, which has proved very popular. Sadly, as you know, Helen had to leave us too soon, but I'm glad to see her here today. So welcome, Helen, and thank you for all that you've done. Her replacement, Mark Upton, has more than lived up to the mark. So I'm sorry, Mark. But he's maintained that spirit of dedicated service and has now reopened Bradbury Lodge and the Camponi Rehabilitation Centre. So thank you, Mark, for all that you've been doing. Despite these setbacks from the pandemic, your charity has kept abreast of rapid technological changes that are benefiting blind and visually impaired people. Only yesterday, a very informative low vision exhibition of new technology was held at Bradbury Lodge. There will be more of these, and I encourage everyone to attend to see what opportunities there are for practical help. We've also not only been able to maintain, but to increase our services to visually impaired children and their families. This, of course, is a very important and growing area of the work that we do. In all the work that we do, we recognize that this is your charity. It's not ours, it's not mine. It is your charity as members. And we're here to support everyone in Oxfordshire with vision problems that can't be managed medically or optometrically. We will always be guided by the experts in what is needed, but we're also guided by your participation as members in letting us know what you would like to have the charity do for you. During the past 18 months, the coronavirus has placed exceptional demands on our ability to meet the needs of visually impaired people in the county. Countrywide, the pandemic has resulted in major increases in NHS waiting times from referral to treatment, and ophthalmology has not escaped those effects. Waiting times for cataract surgery, for example, have increased from the recommended 18 weeks to almost a year. And similar increased waiting times are happening for other sight-threatening conditions, while ophthalmologists at the hospital are redirected to treat COVID patients. These waits are unlikely to change quickly and will create increased requests for help from OAB. To meet these growing needs requires not only dedicated skilled staff, but also money. Unfortunately, the world is such that we can't exist without money at the moment. And I ask you for your continued financial support of your charity that has been providing important services in Oxfordshire since its inception in 1877. The future of OAB is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'd like to echo what Adrian said there with regard to thanking all the staff and the volunteers and the trustees of OAB for the tremendous work that they've done over the COVID period. It's been very hard for everybody, and I think everybody has really come through it incredibly well. They have kept very, very level-headed, no panicking, as far as I can see, and it really has been tremendous. The team have been tremendous during the period of the pandemic. And as we come out of that period, there is a feeling of positivity around the team as well, I think. The trustees, the volunteers, the staff, there is really a feeling of, now we can get back together again, we can actually drive things forward. And I'm really pleased to see that throughout the team. Robin will cover the financial situation of OAB, so I won't dwell on that part of things. But as we know, COVID is still impacting everywhere. It's impacting the world, it's impacting us at OAB. And it will continue to do so, I believe, over the next few years. We're not at the end of this. This will stay with us for quite a while now, regardless of vaccinations or not. And it does make things difficult. And as we know, visually impaired people have additional challenges to everyday life normally. So within these times as well, it can be even more difficult. And I congratulate everybody who's managed to work their way through this period, regardless of their situation. If we are coming out of the back end of it in a positive way, then I think that is exceptionally good for everybody. And I'm not just talking about people at OAB now, just people generally. I think that's an excellent result. We have heard of the sad loss of several clients, volunteers, supporters of OAB in the past year. Not all necessarily COVID related, but each and every one of them will be sadly missed in the contribution that they gave to OAB and the time they've spent with us around the organisation. There's been, as Adrian said, a number of changes at OAB in the past year. I'd like to particularly thank Helen, who had a tremendous time with us at OAB with lots and lots of plans, that some of which she was managed to fulfill, others were frustratingly slow in coming to fruition, but she laid the groundwork definitely for some of the things that we're now taking forward. So thank you very much, Helen. I'd also like to thank Michael, who's not here today, who has been involved with OAB for in excess of 14 years, I think, Mark, is it? 14 years, given a lot of good service to OAB over the years, and I'd like to thank him as well in his absence. I'd also like to welcome all the new staff that have come on board recently, in alphabetical order, so I don't give any form of bias whatsoever. Carmel, Darcy, Joanna and Molly, all welcome on board to OAB. You've been in post very differing lengths of time, but I think you're all starting to get a feel for what OAB is about and the sort of organisation you are now involved in. I think Mark's going to give some more detail about what each of them are actually doing within the organisation, but I'd like to welcome each and every one of you on board. And also Mark, who many of you will know from his role as Client Services Manager, which he fulfilled very successfully for a number of years, is now our Chief Executive Officer and is leading and shaping the team in a very, very good way. We think there's a lot within Mark that he really can produce the best in the team, and will lead it in some very, very good directions for the visually impaired people of Oxfordshire. So thank you, Mark, as well. As Adrian said, there's various ways that OAB operates within the community, various things we do, various services we deliver. And we do encourage everybody to become involved in all that we do, whether it's in receipt of services, whether it's in receipt of training or advice, but also in terms of actually supporting the organisation. That could be in terms of attending some of the events that we run, to find out how you personally may be able to be helped by the services that OAB provide. It may be by organising independent fundraising activity, spreading the word amongst your family and friends about the work that we do, so perhaps they may be encouraged to raise money for OAB, whether it be through donations or whether it be through remembering us in a will. Those are all very, very good ways that you can support OAB, as well as generally getting involved with the organisation. As Adrian says, it is the organisation of the members, so the members do need to stay involved with the organisation itself. And remember, if you are attending an event, if you are attending an activity, OAB actually subsidises, if not pays totally, for a lot of those activities that you take part in. So this can only be done if we have the funds to do so. A lot of the activities and a lot of the events we put on just won't exist without fundraising. So again, it's people that we need the support from people, we need support from our members. Looking ahead to the upcoming year, we really are looking to consolidate the organisation. It's been a period, a very fluid period over the last 18 months, and we know what the financial situation was previously to that. So we are very much looking at a period of consolidation for the organisation, but taking every opportunity to actually move forward into local communities within Oxfordshire as much as we possibly can. And I know one of our trustees, Janet, has founded the Banbury Group, which now is operating in the north of the county, and we're very, very grateful for that. And I understand that it is running really, really well, and a lot of Banbury people are getting involved and are very, very pleased that OAB are operating back in the north of the county. And we're looking also at other areas of the county as well. So if there's anything in your local area, wherever you come from, if there is something you need, contact OAB and put forward a suggestion. It might not happen straight away, but we only can provide if we know where there's need. So please do be in touch. And just to finish off, I'd like to thank again everybody for coming along today. I'd like to thank again staff, volunteers and trustees of OAB. So I shall stop talking now, and I shall hand over to Robin, who will cover the finances of the organisation. Over to you, Robin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, Deputy Lieutenant Moira Darlington, and welcome all the ladies, particularly today, and some other distinguished guests, and Chair and colleagues. I would like to tell you a little bit about the finances of the association as they are now. You may, those who were here last year, will remember that it was a pretty dire place to be, and it was no fun at all to stand up and say that we were quite close to bankruptcy. But that has been turned around with a lot of effort by a lot of people. And this year's report, those of you who've got copies of it may have seen what it says. It's a far more agreeable read than it was last year. But there are some caveats to put in, and I will mention those. There's no room for complacency, and we are not completely out of the wood. We can barely see the light on the other side. But the first thing I would do is to draw your attention to, if you have the copy with you, to the passage that starts at the bottom of page 8 with financial statements. On page 9, we give the situation about unrestricted funds in particular, which is where the great danger point has been in the past years. And on this occasion, we made a healthy surplus of just over £100,000. And it should be said immediately that that was due to the receipt of a large legacy for about that amount. I'll come back to what that tells us about the remaining finances of the organisation, which have, as you say, Chair, been quite badly affected by COVID in various ways. But we put a lot of emphasis on fundraising, and we made a number of successful applications. As always, of course, a lot of unsuccessful applications. When I started on this business in other contexts, I was instructed by those who knew to expect about 1 in 10 of applications to be successful for funds. I think we've done quite a lot better than that. my guess is that it's more like 1 in 4 or 5. And that is partly, if not entirely, due to the obvious appeal to those to whom we've been of the needs of the association and the people we serve. So that has looked up. And what we're hoping to do is to diversify and increase our sources of income to reduce the risk of damage when individual sources fail, as they can do, or when we have drawn heavily on their generosity, we have to abstain for a year or two in order not to outstay our welcome. Now, unrestricted funding is particularly important because it does all the boring things. It pays for basics like overheads and staff, tends therefore to be unattractive to donors who tend to think that they want to give money to things that have a more obvious sex appeal about them and therefore attract the willingness to give money to particular services that we do. Now, those are also important, and I'll come back later to this. One of the oddities of the last year has been that actually we made rather less, as it were, in the way of progress on restricted funds than on unrestricted funds. And I don't entirely understand the reasons for this. And it may be that it's one of the effects of COVID, that the funds which are specifically dedicated to particular needs are under such pressure that they've had to share it out more thinly. And the larger trusts that we've approached have not immediately been put under that kind of pressure. I don't know, but anyway, it's one of the curiosities of the last year. The restricted funds, we did make a surplus, but in the light of what I just said, you'll understand that it was a pretty modest surplus. Also, of course, allowing for the fact that a legacy is by definition unrestricted funds, and so it goes into the other pot. So we had a respectable surplus in the year, as opposed to a small deficit, which we were grateful was not larger in the previous year. And I should draw attention, because one always has to do this in writing to sources of funds who don't know us, that of course we also have quite a lot of in the balances, which is a capital, particularly the capital asset of Bradbury Lodge, which is worth about £500,000. But this is in practice unrealisable, one, because I don't think it would sell fast if we tried to sell it, and two, we need our headquarters, and it seems to be a very admirable place for that purpose, particularly after the conversions that were undertaken some 10 years ago. So we explain to people we've got to have somewhere to lay our head, so to speak, but we still are under pressure otherwise for raising funds for all the important things involved in actually running the show. So that's basically what I wanted to say in general terms. You'll see from this page that we've acknowledged our responsibilities for doing all the things that under law we're required to do, including preparing financial statements, giving a true and fair view of the state of affairs. And it was duly passed by the trustees at our last meeting and signed by you, sir. Indeed, you signed it twice.
At least twice.
And so that is therefore, I therefore lay it before you for your information and comment and any questions you may have. On the next page, we have the independent examiner's report to the trustees. We're not big and ugly enough to require a full audit, but we do have to have an independent examination by a qualified accountant, and that is the page to which all treasurers and chairmen turn instantly when they have a look at their new accounts to see whether it's clear. And I'm happy to say it is clear. So we are okay there. I should at this point add that at the end of my session, or somewhere on the agenda, you may have found another place for it, so, we need to ask the authority of this meeting to reappoint the independent examiner, Lady Nicola Cadwallader, and to give authority to the trustees to fix the remuneration in the time of its raise. That's not a Queen's ransom, but it's something we have to do, and we are legally required to do it. So I'll come back to that at the right moment, if I may. And I'd just like to draw your attention in slightly more detail to page 10, where you will see set out the main sources of income and expenditure for this year, this year under report, compared with last year, the dreadful year of 2019-20. And a number of things to note. We've separated donations and legacies now so that you can see that donations went up from unrestricted funds a bit compared with the previous year, but from restricted funds they went down, which was a point I mentioned earlier. Legacies, you will see, are vastly increased on the previous year. The previous year we had a pretty lean time of it in terms of legacies. And I have to say that our predecessors with responsibility for the charity had gone on the basis that if you had a legacy, you were required to spend it at once. Now, this is actually legally wrong. When you have money under your care, your task is to look after it in the interests of the charity and to ensure, among other things, that you remain a going concern and able to do what it is you exist to do. You don't have to spend it to prove that. And what happened was that we spent so much of it, there was very little left. Anyway, we've done quite a bit to remedy that, as you will see. Now, the other thing I would draw your attention to in all this is that we've increased expenditure on raising funds. You may ask about that, but we are now spending the money very carefully and prudently on that purpose, and if I may say so, to very considerable effect. So really many thanks to those who've been doing it. The expenditure on raising funds will be a feature for the future, and it is something that we are very well advised to do, and it seems so far to be working rather well. The charitable activities, however, you will notice were among those things that went down on the previous year. If you look at the total for charitable activities, 171,000, that compares with 201,000 in the previous year. And that was also, similarly, there was a reduction in trading activities because we simply couldn't do all the things that we had been normally used to doing from Bradbury Lodge in providing services and equipment to individuals who needed them. So these were all among the negative aspects of the effect that COVID has had upon us. I'm hoping Mark will tell us more, I'm sure, about this, that we're opening up and able to do more for the future. But it's certainly been a problem that was not of our making, and we've done our best with it. So I think that is, those are the main features I wanted to draw your attention to on page 10. And finally, to say the net effect is very good, but it wouldn't have looked so good if we had no legacies. So I think everybody needs to remember that though we're doing well in the circumstances, we need to go on doing well, and we need to do better. And from Mark will be able to tell you more, but the present year, I have in front of me the report on the first 5 months of the present year, and fundraising is going pretty well and is within a shout of where it should be in terms of our needs for the present year. So things are looking up, and all power to everybody's elbow in helping to keep that going. Well, that I think is the sum of my report. And so for some time, Chair, we can come back to the question of reappointing the external examiner.
Would you like to do that now?
Well, can we do it now, if that's all right? Over to you. Over to you.
As Robin explained, we need to gain a vote from the membership on retaining Nicola Cadwallader as the independent auditor for the organisation. So I'd like to call by a show of hands if any members here could raise their hands if they're in agreement to to approve the appointment of Nicola Cadwallader. Janet, could you do a count, please? Because I can't see. Thank you. That sounds pretty good. Is anybody against that? Presumably not.
No.
No.
And maybe
Thank-
with that, have the authority for the board to appoint a remuneration when the time comes. I think yes, I might as well.
Okay, and on a second vote, if we could approve her remuneration in.
$18.90 now.
Even more than before. Excellent. What would you vote for next?
Into your hand.
Thank you very much, Robin. There is one part of procedure that I rather foolishly missed out right at the start of the meeting, and that is the approval of the minutes from last year's AGM. You could have received a copy of those minutes as you came in. I don't know if you had a chance to peruse them or not, but I need to take a vote on the approval of those minutes as a true and accurate record of last year's AGM. Now, I'm not sure quite how many people attended last year's AGM online. Anybody who actually attended, any members that attended last year's AGM? Okay, we've got a few then. If we can have a vote to approve those minutes as a true record of last year's meeting, please.
People that were here, the similar hands
Yeah.
were going up.
Is that the same?
5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes.
Okay, right, well, those we can take as approved then, Mark. Okay, having got that bit out of the way, I'd now like to pass over to our CEO, Mark Upton, to deliver his report to us.
Thank you, Guy. I don't know why they put the two visually impaired people work by the trip hazards here, but makes it more of an entertaining AGM, I think.
I just hope one of us.
Yeah, and capturing it for the first time on film. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me here to share, I suppose, the last year and what's been happening. And what I can say, a very eventful year, lots of challenges, lots of triumphs and lots of changes. This time last year when we were having our AGM, we were working out how on earth we're going to do it online. And in that week, whilst I was hosting it online on Teams, my internet connection went down, which as you can imagine last year was an absolute disaster. So thankfully we managed to get through. And it's so good to be here in person and to actually see people face to face. I know it's very strange and very difficult time, but it's good to actually be able to connect with people in person rather than via email or on Zoom asking people to turn their mics on and off. So we don't have to do that today. And also just to welcome everybody if you're viewing online as well, watching later. So I just want to, again, another person to thank Helen on the transition through last year. Although Helen went off for a time, I couldn't have asked for a smoother support, actually, both from Helen and from the trustees and the other staff to bring me on board. Bizarrely, without actually seeing anybody in person, all from home, it was a really smooth change over to my new role. And thank you to everybody who's given me support in that time. As you can probably realise, it wasn't something I was necessarily jumping towards, and I needed a lot of encouragement and a lot of support, and it's really pleasing to have that support and to have people behind me, because I can tell you I do need it. So thank you very much. And I want to go on to look back on the last year that we had. So within last year, we've had an incredible amount of work achieved by the staff and volunteer team. So within this year, we've supported 1,676 individuals. So that's visually impaired people across Oxfordshire that we supported. We've provided 96 technology training sessions, most of which have been remote. So supporting people to get online, to be able to connect with family and friends, do their online shopping. And there's a lot more needed in that area. We've been providing, we've started our own telephone befriending service, and we're currently supporting around 75 partnerships. We've been supporting 75 partnerships for weekly support. We've been holding telephone meetups and Zoom socials. Much like a lot of you, we've probably been used to it now, but for some people that is a very new and different thing. So we've also done telephone groups where people can dial in and chat to their friends through a telephone conference call. We've been able to facilitate that. We've supported children and young people and their families. For a lot of you realise homeschooling is a challenge, but it's even more of a challenge when you're homeschooling a visually impaired child who may have had extra support within that time. So we've been able to support the families with encouragement and a few online activities. We've also been involved with campaigning and awareness. So you may have heard me on the radio talking about e-scooters. So don't get us started on pavement parking or e-scooters. We'll be here for a long time. But we've been banging that drum. In fact, that's how I met Sarah, our guest speaker, through some of the work we've been doing in ensuring that we keep Oxfordshire a safe and accessible place for visually impaired people. And that's something we're keen to carry on doing because it is important that we voice the views of visually impaired people and disabled people in the county. So you may hear us again on the radio shouting about something. So it's been an active year. It's been a really tough year, but a really active year. I have to say, last year when we when we were closing up the building, ready to go home, I was thinking, what on earth are we going to be doing at home? Because we were so focused on our centre. And it's been really good to be able to realise actually we can do a lot more remotely. We can actually support people across the county in a better way and not be so focused on our resource centre. And the team were absolutely incredible, all facing COVID themselves directly in terms of the changes to their lives and the changes to their home life and having to set up from home. And everybody did an absolutely fantastic job. So thank you so much for sticking with it and bearing with us as we've been able to go through those changes. And then I also want to thank the volunteers who've also been working from home and receiving telephone calls and emails from us saying, could you please call these people? And sending out lists of names to call. And we've been able to react and we've been able to support. And I'm so pleased to say we've truly been able to be there for people during this time. And that brings me to this year. So that was all happening during lockdown. But as April came and I stepped up into this role, we've then had to face a few more challenges. Now, how do we open back up? How do we go back to doing face-to-face work? How does that look? And how do we do it safely? So we've opened up Bradbury Lodge, our resource centre. We've slowly been able to go back to working within the office, to be able to see people face-to-face, to be able to do the demonstrations of equipment and give out information. And like yesterday, we held a technology day where we could show people the new technology and show them how it works and how it can suit them. So that's been a really good thing for us to be able to just get back and to see people. We've been able to open up some of our clubs and our groups, been able to meet people face to face in cafes and go for walks and do other activities outside. We've opened up our tennis, our cycling, and some of our other activities. So that's great to be able to get out and about and get active. I don't know about you, but I found it hard to do any exercise during lockdown. The motivation was hard. So it's really good to have those activities, specialist activities for people. In fact, I was roped in last year to do a tandem ride. So I had to dust off my exercise bike last year. And that was a fantastic time to be able to do that at the horse path running track. And now we go to Wheels for All on a regular basis. We've also set up a new group in Banbury. So Janet has done a fantastic job up in Banbury, not just meeting socially, but actually now looking at doing more active walks around the area and getting more involved in the community in Banbury. It's a really important part for me and for us as OAB that we stretch out across the county. We're not just Oxford, we are Oxfordshire, and our services should be available to everybody across the county. So now we're doing more social activities in that area. It's really good to see that open up and to start to build a base. So yeah, thank you so much for everybody who's been able to take part in that. Also, the children and young people's activities have started up as well. And what I'm really excited about is the regular visually impaired tennis, which Laura has been able to start. and do those regular weekly sessions. So young people getting out playing visually impaired tennis. If you've never seen it before, it's great fun. We play with a little ball with ball bearings in and a slightly shorter court, but the kids absolutely love it. And it's a great way for them to get out, get out and about, and to just socialise as well. So our children's activities are really now taking off, and getting them back out, into the community is a very good move for us. So it's not just been about the services. We've also had quite a few staff changes this year, as Guy said. So last year, Michael Ling, our finance officer, retired. So huge thank you to Michael for all the support he gave me as I stepped up to the role, and for the information he supported the trustees and the staff and OAB generally with his knowledge and role. With that, we've brought in a new member of staff. So Carmel, welcome. Carmel has stepped into Michael's shoes very well, and puts up with me asking ridiculous questions about finance. I'm surprised she hasn't blocked off her door or blocked my emails, because the amount of stupid things I ask is incredible. But she has been really good support, and settled in really well to her role at OAB. And as Guy mentioned earlier, we've brought in 3 other staff to OAB, which is a big change for us. As a small team, I was really worried about bringing in new people, and we've been the same team for a couple of years now. But they've all settled in so well. So Joanna has joined as our Trust and Grants fundraiser, and joined in July. Molly, who you'll see behind the laptop over there, who's making this available online, has come in as our communications officer and doing everything online, social media. She'll be doing the newsletter this time in November, and helping us sort of spread the word about OAB. And we also have Darcy, who's not here today, but Darcy is our newest member and our youngest member as well, who's joined as our apprentice. And he is doing a customer service apprenticeship and working within our resource centre, supporting Nathan. So as Nathan will tell you, it's been extremely busy as we've opened back up. And as I've stepped up, we've needed some extra support for Nathan in that role. And bringing Darcy in has meant we can have a young visually impaired person employed by OAB who can actually learn to support our clients as they come in and give information and advice and demonstrations. So I'm really excited to see Darcy grow and as he sort of fits into the team. But luckily he's on holiday this week, so I don't know how we got past that. But so thank you to our new staff for joining. It's really good to see you sort of settling in. And if I quickly finish off by just explaining a bit about our fundraising efforts. So as part of Joanna and Molly joining us, it fits in with our sort of yearly fundraising strategy. So this year we've decided to focus quite heavily on 3 areas. The first one being trusts and grants, so writing to different organisations to give us money, basically, for different projects, to support some of those projects. And what we're looking at now is to support us for multiple years, so that we can tell in, say, 3 years that we know we've got this money coming in. As Robin will tell you, that's so important for us to know what we've got coming in. And that's where our fundraising efforts are going for trusts and grants. And as Molly's joined us with communications, we actually need to be more out there in the community, more known, and people need to know more about us and support us by doing some of those events. We've had recently a triathlon. We've got somebody doing a half marathon soon. We've had somebody doing different events for us and raising money. So it's important that we connect those people in and that we communicate well with those people, and we create a good journey for people. I always feel that if you donate to an organisation, you need to know where that money's going. You need to know what we're doing with it. And it's important that we communicate that, how we share that online and in our newsletter, and that you trust us, that your money goes to where you want it to go to, that we are actually showing what we're doing with that money. You know, it's all well and good us saying we're doing it, but we need to prove it, and that's where we come in and we can share that. So those are the 2 key areas, and the third one is community fundraising. So we're going to be doing this on a voluntary basis, and soon we'll be starting up our new community voluntary fundraising group. So if you're interested, and if you're interested in being involved, in doing a bit of community fundraising, events, activities, all to raise money for OAB, let us know and we can connect you in, because I think this is a really important area for volunteers and for clients to get involved with OAB. So that's our 3 key areas, which are really important. And as we go into the next year, obviously we've got lots of plans, we've got lots of ideas. We know there's lots of challenges with COVID coming back. You know, we don't know what the future holds. Financially, we have no idea. We know it's going to be tough, but we have no idea what the future holds for the economy. And we have a big county, as Adrian and others have explained. There's a lot of visually impaired people out there who we aren't necessarily reaching. So there's huge demand for our services across there, but we can't necessarily meet them. So we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. But what I will say, as Adrian said, we've been here since 1877. We've outlived many monarchs, many prime ministers. We've gone through 2 world wars, and we're now facing, or been going through, a global pandemic. I have no doubt that OAB will continue to be here for many, many years to come, and will continue to serve the community of Oxfordshire and the visually impaired people in the area. And we will be a part of that community, and we will continue to build on that and be a part of it. And it's so pleasing to see our rich history of OAB, which we are all part of. As Adrian said, we are OAB. It's all of us together. And I think we can face those challenges together as a whole, and we all have a really important part to play. So thank you so much for being involved. Thank you for coming along today and being a part of OAB. And I hope people can continue to be a part of OAB. Whether you're here for the first time, you can sign up to our newsletter, become a member, donate, join the club, basically. It's all good fun. We've got lots ahead of us. So thank you very much. And yeah, if I haven't spoken to you yet, I look forward to speaking to you at the end.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. That was very rousing. And I'm going to call you back up to handle the election of trustees and officers to the board.
Stand up and sit down now. I don't know where I am. Okay, so as part of our Articles of Association, 3 trustees have to step down each year. So this year we have Professor Adrian Hill, Dr. Gurjeet Jutley and Robin Birch stepping down. And I'm very pleased to say that they're all stepping back up again. So that's a relief. So I'll go through this as we've had nominations for their positions. So Professor Adrian Hill has been proposed by Colin Cure and seconded by Savita Shah. Dr. Gurjeet Jutley was proposed by Leslie Rubies and seconded by Michelle Lawful. And Robin Birch was proposed by Michelle Lawful and seconded by Colin Cure. So we do this together, but if we can please have a show of hands as members to approve the election of the renomination of the trustees. So.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 people.
Fantastic.
Recording these numbers, but 21.
Yeah, Carmel, I think, is as well. Okay. So yeah, we're okay. Thank you very much. And I'm pleased to say as well, we also have 2 trustees who were co-opted by the board during the year, and we just need to formalise that today at the AGM. So we have joining us as new trustees, we have Janet Johnson, who has been proposed by Savita Shah and seconded by Kevin Pamphilon. And we have Julian Bagwell, who was proposed by Kevin Pamphilon and seconded by Leslie Rubies. So if I can have a show of hands to approve those nominations. And thank you, Janet, who is... yeah.
Janet's been all right. 6, 7,
Yeah.
8, 9,
Side of the assistants is great, thank you.
13, 14, 15 people.
Thank you, Janet. She's been working hard all year, so I can tell you that. So in our memorandums and articles of association, the trustees elect the officers of the board. And so the trustees have elected for this year, 2020-2021, the officers are the chair of trustees, Guy Lawful, vice chair, Edward Pilling, and Treasurer, Robin Birch. And so the remaining members of the Board of Trustees are Professor Adrian Hill, who's our President, Margaret Simpson, Yvonne Rainey, Edward Pilling, Simon Cruden, Janet Johnson, and Julian Bagwell.
Thank you, Mark. One of us is going to trip over the table soon. Okay, so on to a Q&A. If anybody has any questions for anybody up here at the front, then if you'd like to raise your hands and give us your question, and we'll see who's best placed to answer it.
There's two hands gone up, Guy. There's a lady over there, first of all, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I've asked this before, but is OAB affiliated, or do they liaise with Oxford Pedestrians Association? I think it would be a
Mark?
very worthwhile liaison they did.
We have, but only through social media and communications online. So we've done a little bit. They've been involved with a couple of campaigns we've done on, I think pavement parking was probably the last one, but we're certainly connected, so yes.
Oh, yes. Good.
Okay.
Okay, Guy, there was a gentleman here on the front.
Okay.
Could I make a suggestion that you might consider holding the AGM in a different location, alternate years? For example, we hold it here one year and in South Oxfordshire another year. Which I stand corrected on this, but very few people seem to attend in my area, which is Didcot. So I wonder whether it would be fairer if you split the AGM to different areas. I mean, I can suggest somewhere in South Oxfordshire you could meet, but
Okay, I mean,
it's most traditionally been here all the time.
yeah, I have no fundamental objection to considering that as a proposal. Certainly, we can discuss that, yeah. Certainly can, Chris, yeah.
I can tell you the location. I know this sounds very biased, but it's in where I live.
What, your house?
Calm down. No, seriously, there's some people here who know what I'm talking about, I think, and Savita and Tara, for example. But we've got a large lounge. I'm in a retirement apartment, not a care home, retirement apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a large lounge. Now, when things get back more to normal, I think our manager would be happy, and it would probably be cheaper. But anyway, but it's a large room, and it's got a bar, sort of tea bar, and it's got microphone facilities and all that. They're all there.
Okay, well, like I say, got nothing fundamentally against that, so we'll put that forward as a consideration for future years. Thank you very much, Chris.
Was there a lady at the back with a hand up? No. There's no more hands.
No more? Nobody else? Okay then, on that basis then, I will call the AGM part of this meeting to a close, and I will welcome our speaker for today, Sarah Stephenson-Hunter, who is Disability Staff Officer. Is that correct? Disability Staff Officer at Oxford University. So, welcome very much, Sarah. She's coming past the cables as well.
Table, just come on, water.
If we put it on the mic, the table is there.
Thank you.
Okay, and you, the camera's directly.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Now, I have to confess, do we need the microphone raised? I heard. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good. I deliberately planned to not use PowerPoint today. I had planned on having that as my laptop, but actually, this is my first in-person talk since the pandemic, and I've actually been getting along swimmingly with Zoom. I've found the adjustment to doing presentations on Zoom quite okay, because it gave me the capacity to control the slides and everything else. I come to my first presentation in person, and my laptop is misbehaving. So it's fine, it's fine. All it means is, Chair, that I can't keep track of time. So please don't be afraid to shout.
We'll pull the plug.
That's fine, that's fine.
If you're getting past the time we've rented this place for, we'll let you know.
It really is an absolute pleasure and privilege to have been asked to come along and speak today. Thank you to the Chair and the Trustees and to Mark. I believe it's a moment of history today. Not only do you have Mark as your first visually impaired CEO, but you've got me as your first VI speaker at the AGM, which is quite incredible. I know, who'd have thought it? But for me, that embodies a lot of the ways in which I think, local associations for the blind need to change and are changing, and that, it's not about an organisation that here is doing things for blind and partially sighted people, but has blind and partially sighted people involved and at the heart of what it's doing. So it's been fantastic to hear the reports from, your treasurer and from Mark and for everybody else about all the wonderful work that's been going on, because I am a firm believer in nothing about us without us. And so I think it's really great that as visually impaired people, we can be involved in these things and take things forward. So, who am I? That's not an existential question. As was introduced, so I am Sarah Stephenson-Hunter. I am, my full title, Staff Disability Advisor and Trans Lead in the University of Oxford Equality and Diversity Unit. I think it's the longest job title I've ever had. But I've been in post since March 2019. I actually started the post when I was still living in Nottingham. And so I spent 4 months, half my time in Oxford at an Airbnb in central Oxford and the other half working from home in Nottingham. I was grateful to my boss for letting me do that way before the pandemic hit. So I was quite used to that home working, which was a good thing. It was quite a big deal because for those of you that haven't worked out already, and I've said myself, I am visually impaired. I have no vision at all. It's been like that for about 10 years now. I'll get more into that in a bit. And so for me, coming to a new city, new place, new job, and not even living here all the time was tricky. It was tough. I got to know a small part of the city quite well. But I'm still, what are we now, 2 years on, getting to know the county and the city. And I have to confess, and please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not from Oxford, as you can tell. I'm from Northumberland originally. And I saw Oxford as this posh place. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get on? But it's been brilliant. I think it's the same wherever you go. People are people. It's just been great to be involved in some local things. As Mark has said, I've met Mark through work with the City and County Council on access to transport and stuff within the city and county regarding the pandemic. So it's been great to see the work that's been there. I've also had quite a bit of involvement with the County Council team for visual impairment, who have been fantastic in enabling me to sort of start to get about and get roots around and everything. So yeah, here I am. It still amazes me that somebody from a small town in Northumberland, has ended up working at the University of Oxford. Because as the university would like to tell you, and why not, leading university, top in the world, does some fantastic stuff. I'm really proud to work there, particularly obviously during the pandemic and the fact that it was key in developing the vaccine. Don't worry, I'm not an academic or a researcher. I haven't been involved in any of that, but it's been great to be part of the work that's gone on there. But yeah, it still amazes me that I've got this job, I'm where I am, because those of you in the room who are visually impaired will be well aware that, for us as visually impaired people, finding work is in itself hard. Finding work that we enjoy is even harder. And finding work that actually, is respected by others and pays quite well well, it's a bit like finding hen's teeth. Honestly, I don't quite know how I've done it, but it's happened, and I recognise my privilege. I think what's really interesting is that I started my career in working for the RNIB. I had nearly as long a job title. I was in policy and development and campaign, and back in the late 90s. You know, RNIB has its pros and cons. They do some great work. But you know, my work there was good, but at that point I wasn't sure where my career would go. And so to have ended up where I am now has been quite incredible. And I would genuinely count myself quite lucky. But interestingly, I remember when I worked at the RNIB, there was a lot of campaigning about, you know, what's the stat that's given? 75% of those visually impaired people of working age who can work and are qualified and able to are unemployed. It's disturbing that here we are 20, 30 years later, and that stat still hasn't changed much. I know things are improving and things are changing, but really, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I guess that's a challenge to us all. And that's why, if you like, I've made the choice to use my position to do talks like this, to, if you like, be a reluctant role model. I do hate that phrase, but by the virtue of the fact that I am where I am and I've got the job I've got and that it gives me access to places and I get invited to doing things like this, I'm trying to use that position to sort of spread the word, to share awareness that, and again, this sounds simple, but that if you're blind or visually impaired, if you have any other disability, then providing you're given the right support and equipment, which actually isn't always that complicated, then why can't you end up at the Uni of Oxford? Why can't you end up wherever you want to be? You know, it sounds a cliche in a way, but it's true. And again, as I said, I don't like to see myself as a role model in some ways because I think I'm just extraordinarily ordinary. But you know, I guess I am proof that it can happen. And so I guess I want to encourage those of you here who are visually impaired, those of you watching, those of you here who obviously work with visually impaired people, you as a charity. It's just an encouragement to keep going and to keep pushing and to keep striving. I was really impressed to hear from Mark the work that you're doing with the sort of sports and leisure. I actually, growing up, so my visual impairment is linked to a type of arthritis, which again surprises people because I was diagnosed age 2. It's a type of arthritis called Still's disease. And it's interesting, actually, just as a slight aside, for those of you who've got vision, you might be thinking, what's that mark on her arm? Well, I had a close encounter with a treadmill. I am a runner, and I've taken up running over the past 4 or 5 years. I actually ran the Oxford Half Marathon in 2019 in that rain. It was, yeah, I know. I say ran, I should have had flippers. It was incredible, but it was wet. And for me, lockdown had been tough. Moving to Oxford's been tough because I lost my guides and I couldn't get out, and there seems a shortage of guides. I bought a treadmill. I've been getting on fine with it, but I decided to do something different, which was a mistake, because that's where that's come about. But nonetheless, the point I was making is that I actually ended up going to a walk-in centre, and the doctor was going through my records, and he was asked about my arthritis, and I said, I've got Still's disease. And I kid you not, he said, no, you haven't. I was like, I have? And he was like, I've been practicing since the mid-80s, and I've read about it in books, but I've not come across anybody. And for me, that just shows there's still a lot of work to be done out there. You know, people's perceptions of things like arthritis and blindness and visual impairment. People have a whole load of ideas in their mind when you say things like you're blind or you've got arthritis. You know, they conjure up this image of things you can and can't do, places you can and can't go. And for me, I guess if there's one thing I would say, I chose from a very early age that I wasn't going to be defined by my disability. Now, don't get me wrong, my disability has placed limitations on me. I mentioned I was diagnosed with arthritis as a child. I then developed cataracts age 7, which, without giving my age away, was a good 30, 40 years ago, in the days when you were in hospital for 3 weeks per eye for a cataracts operation. It's amazing that, what, 4 decades later, and you're in and out in the day, and it's just incredible. But there I was as a 7 or 8 year old, in for 3 weeks per eye. There was no lens implants or anything, so that was my beginning of wearing thick glasses. I then developed problems with glaucoma, and as I said, I grew up in Northumberland. It so happened that the specialist who dealt with the connection between Still's disease and glaucoma was based in Windsor. So I spent probably 5 years between the ages of sort of 12 to 17, 18, travelling with my mum on average twice a month from Northumberland to Windsor for some specialist treatment. I think at one stage my mum counted it up and I had over 200 admissions, about 50 plus operations, some experimental in the time. And I don't say that because I want the badge to say, you know, I've had the most operations, because, I no doubt haven't, and that's not something I want. But, you know, that happened. It obviously had a big impact on my school life. I had to take periods out of school. I only managed to do 2 A-levels in the end because of disruption to schooling. I had to stay an extra year in sixth form. I went to a mainstream school all the way through, which, you know, we're talking late 80s. Things weren't great then, they're still not fantastic now, but it was a small school, didn't know how to support me. But I've just decided a long, long time ago that actually we get one life, and really we should try and take whatever opportunities we can to push the boundaries and to make challenges. To challenge ourselves and society. In fact, I remember when I was applying to go to university, and again, working at Oxford, I hate when people ask what uni did you go to, because I went to what was Nottingham Polytechnic. In my 3 years there, it became Nottingham Trent University. I enjoyed the course. I did a great degree in communication studies. But again, there I was, as somebody with a severe visual impairment, doing a course that involved lots of essay writing, lots of reading, lots of watching films and other things to analyse them in terms of the media. But I was like, no, I want to do this course. So it was a challenge. I did it. I graduated. And I remember my mum telling me that my special needs tutor at the time was actually, unbeknownst to me, telling my parents that they were concerned that I was applying to university because they thought I was probably overreaching myself and setting myself up to fail. Now, obviously that was wrong, but I do believe that advice was given sort of, you know, as best as they could give it. But I think it does also show that, you know, whilst we only get one life and we have to take opportunities, that yes, we should listen to the advice that other people give us, be that advice from friends, from family, from professionals, from whoever. Generally, that advice is, you know, it's got our best interests at heart, it's given for the right reasons. But just because people give you good advice, you don't have to follow it. And I believe that, you know, I'm not saying we should just be selfish and do whatever we want and go wherever we want and do whatever we want. Of course, we have to listen to reason. But there are times in my life when I've done things like taking my job at Oxford, when the sensible part of me was like, no, you know, I've been at the University of Nottingham for nearly 10 years, working as student disability advisor. I had a lot of friends, I had a good network, I really enjoyed being there. but my job had changed and there were challenges in it, and I felt like I wasn't able to be myself and to do things that I was passionate about. And so I was like, no, I'm going to apply and see what happens. I got a shock when they offered me the job, because I was like, oh, I'm going to have to move, which I did, and I'm pleased. But I just think there are times in our lives when, yes, we face great challenges, and I've faced many of them in my life. I won't list them all because we'll be here a while, but one of the other things I do is I do campaign on issues around disability and LGBT inclusion. For those of you that hadn't read the material beforehand and weren't aware of my history, I am openly out as transgender. I came out in 2013. I began social transition, which for me involved sadly having to leave my family at the time, and I don't blame them for that, but that was just something that was necessary. So there I was, sort of in my early 40s, having to live on my own and navigate this new world of being not just disabled, but also LGBT. And it was tough. It was a challenge, and it was scary, and I lost a lot of friends. And it hasn't been easy, but for me, I felt that was something I had to do. It was the right thing at the time. I had to do it for my own welfare, sanity. You know, if you hear anything about trans issues in the media, you might hear people saying that, oh, people just decide on a whim and it's quite trendy and everything else. Believe you me, it's not. It's tough. It's about often facing exclusion and prejudice from the world in which we live in. And I'm not saying that to get pity, but just to state facts. But for me, that was the right thing to do. But I paid a great price for it. But again, I felt that it was the right thing to do, and I had to do it for my own well-being. And I'm not, I hope it doesn't come across as too melodramatic, but if I hadn't done it, I probably wouldn't be here now for you. So as I say, I've faced challenges, but I've decided to use those challenges to try and educate and to increase awareness. That's why I do the work I do at the university, supporting disabled staff, not just visually impaired staff, but I support all staff across the whole university, which has about 36,000 staff. Yeah, I know. And even if you look at a moderate estimation of disability, let's say 10%, that's quite a few, and there is just me. I work within a team of equality advisors, but I'm the only one that has a caseload. So I will be there to advise on adjustments that are needed, support. I do get involved in that wonderful world of access to work. Yes, I know we could spend all day on that. So it's a busy job. It's a very rewarding job. It's sometimes quite an isolating job, because I think one of the benefits of me doing the job as somebody with a disability is obviously I can empathise with some of the staff I'm dealing with, but that does make it tricky at times, because there are times when I have to remind myself, I'm ultimately employed by the university. Whilst I think the university generally does a good job, it's not perfect. There are still changes that need to be done to support their disabled staff. And sometimes I have to reconcile that sort of personal aspect of how I feel about it with what my professional head says. And that can be tricky. But that's just something I have to navigate. So that's my day job. I also do work in terms of freelance training, speaking. And I also decided during lockdown, I was seeing all these people that were, starting making sourdough and cakes and taking up exercise. I decided I was going to start a podcast. So I did. I've always been a bit of a frustrated media type. That's another thing I was talked out of at school. I wanted to go into journalism. Sadly, I listened to that advice, and I shouldn't have done. Excuse me, but I've started a podcast, the Simply Equality Podcast. It's available on all your platforms. But quite simply, I realised that my experience of being disabled, coming out as LGBT, that there was a lot of work on those as individual elements, but not a lot of work that went on to look into those two elements combined. So that's why I started the podcast, and I have released 13 episodes. I basically interview people who are both disabled and LGBT and talk to them about their experiences, about what could each community, sorry, just find my water. Fine, you know, I talk to people about what are their experiences, what could each community learn from each other. It's fascinating. I've interviewed some great people, and it's been really good fun learning how to do that. And it's a lot easier than you think. So just another tip. If there's something you really wanted to do, just go for it. It might not be perfect, but you know, you can do it. So how are we doing for time? Probably nearly done.
25 past.
Okay. So really, what I wanted to come along today and was to hopefully give you an encouragement. Sorry, I've been talking too much. That should be my cue. I just wanted to give you all that individual encouragement that wherever you are in your lives and your situations, you know, we've all had a tough time. It is just water in here, I promise you. We've all had a tough time through the pandemic. I found it particularly tough myself. I've been fortunate that I've had an employer who's been flexible. I have a house where both myself and my partner could have space to work without annoying each other too much. I've got a boss who's not pushing me to go back into the office until I'm ready. But I'm lucky. But it has been an awful time, you know, coming here today. This is a big deal because I don't think I've been in this sort of context for nearly 2 years. And it's scary starting to get back out into the world. You know, I've not been on a bus on my own for 18 months, and I've lost confidence. But I think, like lots of things in my life, it's a question of, okay, so I've done it before, I'll do it again. I might need some help. I'm actually due to move next week, so I will be calling upon a trustee rehab worker to help out again. And again, that's scary, but I just choose not to let my disability define me. So I'll just say to you today, as individuals, bear that message in mind. You know, getting out of your comfort zone is scary at the time, but it can bring great rewards. You know, I've ended up where I am. Who knows where you will end up? And I just wanted to encourage you as a charity as well to keep being there to enable blind and visually impaired people to do that, to live out their lives in as full and as best as way they can. So that's my message. I will shut up now, and any questions if you have them.
See if there's anybody's hands going up. Any questions? There's one from Simon.
Are you back in touch with your family now?
Yes. It's been tough, but yeah, I have 3 kids that it was tough with when I came out, but that's got better.
Are there any other questions?
No, I've stunned you all, that's fine. If you do want to know anything else, just a quick...
There is another hand going up, sorry.
Hello, my name's Claire. I work at the Oxfordshire Hospital at the road here.
Yes, I've been there.
I'm sorry, I haven't met you yet.
That's okay.
I just wondered because occasionally I come across students who are visually impaired at Oxford University, and they have difficulties sometimes navigating around getting everything that they need. And I was wondering if you have much to do with the students, or was it just the staff?
It's really funny, Claire, because when I came to Oxford, that was me stepping out of student disability work.
Right.
And I spent nearly 15 years working with students, and God bless them, I love them. But I'm glad I'm not having to face the start of term because, oh gosh. So I personally just deal with staff, but I'm in very close contact with the Student Disability Advice Service. One of the manager was on my interview panel, so I know they do good work. They have great support available. I wish it was the same for staff. I'm working on it. So there is support for students if they need it. Then if they just look on the university's website for Student Disability Advisory Service, then they'll find it. Yeah, it's been an interesting transition moving to staff side of things.
Its own set of new challenges for you, I should think.
Yeah, but as I said, I don't miss the start of term.
Yes. Thank you.
Are there any more
Any
questions?
more?
Oh, there is one at the front, yes.
Adrian Self from Oxfordshire Community Foundation. We're one of the partner charities of Oxfordshire Association for the Blind. You said there should be about 10% of staff employed by the university with a disability. I fear and suspect the number's probably lower than that. Do you know what the actual numbers are?
So our actual number is probably around 6%.
Is that people with disabilities or people that come to you for help?
No, that's staff who have disclosed a disability.
Right.
There are specific issues with disclosure because obviously if you're somebody in work anyway, then you can be really reluctant to disclose you have a disability because you perceive that people will treat you differently. You might think it's going to affect your career proposition. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, attitudes have changed. They are changing, but there's still work to be done. I also think that at the likes of Oxford, you know, it is Oxford. You know, the name itself is just quite scary. And so if you're an academic or an early career researcher, you can be really reluctant about disclosing because, you know, it's a cutthroat world of being a researcher and an academic, and you really feel that it's going to affect what opportunities you're given for, you know, research opportunities, papers, going to conferences. So often staff will come to me just really beginning to think about disclosing because they might have a particular issue they want support with. So I can talk to them about what support is available. We do ask staff to disclose for equal ops purposes, but that doesn't tally with their staff record, so it is anonymous. So I think the numbers of disclosure are way below what, you know, there would be within the university generally and across the sector more broadly.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Oh, there is a lady. Hello.
Hi there. I'm an elderly, partially sighted. And this morning I had to go to the JR hospital, which I was taken there, so that was fine. I eventually found where I'd got to be and were attended to. But then the getting out, I thought I knew exactly what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up by going into a children's part of the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
which the staff eventually said, sit here, which I did.
Mm.
And they then brought me a wheelchair, which whizzed me along loads and loads of corridors.
It's great, isn't it?
To the outdoor.
Yeah.
Which was, honestly, it was a great relief because
Mhm.
I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing.
It's
The person just chatted on, but I couldn't absorb it. There was too much going on around me, which, so it was a great relief when 20 minutes later I came out of the main entrance to the hospital. And then I was more familiar ground because I kind of knew where I was.
It's a real challenge, isn't it? Because
It was.
I'm all for independence, and I think as blind and partially sighted people, there's pressure on us to show that we can be independent and mobile, and you know, the Paralympics were fantastic, but I think sometimes people think, oh, you're disabled, you have to be a Paralympian. No. Wish I was. But I think there is pressure on us sometimes to be and display being more confident than we sometimes are. And I think, you know, if you get me in my regular environment, then I can walk around without using a cane. Sometimes I possibly should, but that's another matter. But, you know, in a regular environment, I'm fine. But put me in a strange environment, or if, like yourself, you take a wrong turn and you end up thinking, this does not feel like where I want to be. What do I do now? And then you get into that whole dynamic of asking for help, and that puts you on the back foot, and you don't want to seem sort of vulnerable and helpless, but in a way you are.
Independent.
Independence is great, but I think equally sometimes we have to be kind to ourselves, and that's where I've learned through life that asking for help is not a bad thing. I think sometimes people need to learn how to respond when we ask for help. You know, when I ask for help crossing a road, I don't need them to physically take me and, you know, force me across the road. But it happens.
Everybody, yes.
Or when you go somewhere and they see the cane and think, oh, there's a lift if you need it. I'm thinking, I run half marathons. I can climb stairs. Don't assume. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make life easy. But again, it's that assumption. And again, you touched on the point there as well. People think that as blind people, we have this amazing hearing, which can be true. But if you put us in an unusual environment or a noisy environment, it's very bewildering, and it's almost like having a level of hearing impairment. Because I find my brain just can't always process and compute it. So again, assumptions, stereotypes, they're out there, and I think we just have to keep trying to break them down as best we can without feeling we have to be Paralympic athletes. Any more?
There are two more now. There's a lady at the back.
I would just like to follow on from what Margaret's experience was this morning, and I would like, as a trustee of OAB, to ask OAB to contact the eye hospital to say that when somebody has visited you and the appointment has finished, they're obviously not just left to find their own way out of the building. I rather think that is a negative situation at the eye hospital. So I would ask OAB, just, you don't have to mention Margaret's name, but just to say that perhaps they could give consideration to making certain that people know the direction out of the eye hospital.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, as somebody who stayed in a number of eye hospitals across the country, the country, they're a real mixed bag. Have I moved away from the mic? Am I okay?
I was convinced that I knew where to get the lifts were, and when I needed press, but it didn't work out.
The classic for me is, and I had this probably only a couple of years ago, when staff come in and they put your menu card on your table and they don't tell you. They say, why haven't you filled this in? Fill what in? Why haven't you done your teeth? Because I didn't know I had any. And that's been on an eye ward, and I'm not talking decades ago. And again, I get that nurses and doctors and everybody are really busy, but I think, again, without giving OAB a lot more work, there's work that needs to happen with eye hospitals and all sorts of places, because I think unless you actually come across a blind or partially sighted person, you don't really understand that, we're not just blind or partially sighted when we go and see the doctor, but we're blind and partially sighted all the time. So once you're finished with this, it's not a question of, bye, see ya. It's like, is somebody coming to get you, or do you know how to get out? So you better stop me if I give you more work.
There was one last, another gentleman here, one more question.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I'd like to sing the praises of some of the, particularly the railway staff, in my experience. I've had tremendous help at Reading Station. Yesterday, for example, I made a journey from Didcot to Dorking Dean, and there's no staff at Dorking Dean, by the way. And as soon as I got off the train at Reading, there's a member of staff waiting. Are you all right, sir? Can I help you? Yeah, okay. I got to the escalator, let's get up the escalator. I got to the top of the escalator, and another member of staff appeared. You all right, sir? I'll take you to the lift. No, I'll be all right. No, I'll take you to the lift, sir. Don't worry. This chap then took me downstairs. I want to go to the toilet if I get the train. He takes me into the toilet. And when I come out, he was still waiting. Took me further along the platform. And he said, where are you going? I said, platform 4. Gets on the train. And the train, well, she said she was a guard. I thought they were managers, but it's a guard. And she was brilliant. She said, you know there's long steps at Dorking Dean, do you? I said, yes, I said, my friend's meeting me. So, and she checked up on me. It's about a 45-minute journey, just from Guildford. And she came and checked me twice, make sure I was all right. Unfortunately, one little hiccup, when we got there, she wasn't around, and I got up, and I couldn't see the blooming, where the buttons were, out the door. And fortunately, my friend who was meeting me was outside, and he opened it from the outside. That was the only flaw in the journey. But I did actually write to the, not yesterday, but generally, I wrote to the station manager at Reading. And I really get the impression there that they've had sort of special training. I know they should all have training, but there, and when I came back, actually, in the evening, another chap helped me, and I know I used the toilet in the morning, I couldn't remember who it was, I went in there again, and the same thing happened, in reverse. Quite amazing, really good. But I mean, I do without being independent, but there are some situations. I mean, particularly that was the first long distance train journey I've made for about 18 months. So I was unfamiliar with the places and I gradually got into. And I've never been to Dorking Dean for ages. So.
I mean, I would just say that when I spent that 4 months travelling from Derby to Oxford, I had similar experience. Generally, staff were there when you wanted them to be. It's not always the case, but I think things are changing, and we just need to keep pushing, keep going. Yeah. Oh, we're done.
That's it.
Sarah.
I thought you were going to give one more round of applause. I would have.
Sarah, I was just about to lead a round of applause, but thank you, Janet. Okay, so Deputy Lieutenant, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending today, and might see some of you next year. Thank you very much.